you ask any self-published author out there what their least favorite part of publishing a new book is, I can almost guarantee you it's going to be either one or both of these two things: writing their book blurb or writing ad copy. Well, with all the talk in the tech world about everybody's favorite new AI tool, ChatGPT, I thought as an author, maybe I would go test things out and see if the machine could write these things for me. I tested a few really simple examples just to kind of get a feel for how ChatGPT worked. And I gotta say, I came away pretty much amazed and also pretty optimistic that this could be a tool that I could definitely use going forward to optimize my business. So let's go take a look at some of those examples and you can see for yourself. So when I fired up ChatGPT for the first time, I basically was going in to see if it could write me a book description and also some ad copy for my latest horror novel, which is called The End House, which is basically a haunted house novel. So the first task, I guess you could say, that I gave ChatGPT was pretty simple. I said, write a book description for a horror novel about a man who wakes up in a haunted house and finds a black book that contains stories that make him question his reality. I'll let you guys pause the video to read these answers in full so you don't have to listen to me read them out loud. But right off the bat, you can see that just with that simple prompt that I gave it, it filled in some really interesting details on its own and honestly did a really good job. The one thing that I noticed right off the bat though was that, I didn't give the book a title when I asked it to write a description. So it filled in its own title. And this is a really good example of some of the stuff that I've been really impressed with, how ChatGPT essentially contextualizes what you're asking it to do and doesn't just give you very formulaic or templated answers. This is a horror novel about a haunted house, and I mentioned in there's a black book that contains stories. And so you can see that it gave it the title, The Black Book of Nightmares. So I thought that was really interesting. And the description makes it very clear that it is the book and the stories that this guy is reading that are really starting to cause him to question everything and what's real and what isn't. So again, right off the bat, really, really solid first effort. But because it did give it its own title, this is one of those instances where, ChatGPT is an interactive ongoing chat. So the next thing that I asked it to do was essentially change the title of the book to The End House, my own title. And I wanted to see if it would just fill in the gap or if it would completely rewrite a brand new description. And you can see it did exactly what I asked. It kept the description the same, and all it did was rename the title to The End House. So again, it's taking in the context of finding the book title that it gave it itself and replacing it with the suggestion that I made. Pretty smart. So for the second attempt, I basically wanted to build off of the first task that I gave it, still writing a book description, but this time I wanted to fill in some more specifics about my actual book. So I gave it the title this time. I put The End House in the request, and I also changed the, instead of it being just a man who wakes up in the house, I gave some more context about the character. I said he was a struggling writer. I put the character's name, Declan Scheider, and then the rest of it is basically the same. But again, I fed it a little more specific details this time. And the result here is pretty good. They're using my book title. They're making another pretty compelling book description that I think would make somebody that's a fan of the horror genre want to go and read this book. But it is incorporating my character's name this time. It does mention that he's a struggling writer. It doesn't really do a whole lot with the struggling writer aspect, which is fine. I don't know really what it would do there. But again, a really good job, and I was able to kind of slipstream in some more specifics about my book to make it more original to my specific needs. So moving on from the book descriptions, I shifted gears and I asked it to write me some ad copy, and I wanted to keep this short on purpose, so I was specific in my request. So I asked it to write me a 2-sentence ad for a horror novel about a haunted house. Pretty basic, pretty generic, but if you've ever written ad copy, you know that the basics and the tropes that readers are looking for in specific genres are really what is going to compel them and make them want to buy a book. You don't really have to get into the nitty-gritty, so I wanted to see what it would do with this, and you can see that it does a pretty good job. And what I find really interesting about this response is right off the bat, just the difference in the tone between when I asked it to write a book description versus me asking it to write an ad copy. The book description was compelling in its own right, but it was basically just focusing specifically on the story and making the story sound interesting. As soon as I told it to write ad copy, you can see that it almost becomes a call to action. Right here on the first sentence, it says, unlock the secrets of a haunted house that has been tormenting a family, etc., etc. So it's already telling the customer, the potential buyer, it's giving them that call, like, hey, come unlock the secrets, which I think is really, really cool. Here, it did also create its own title again because I forgot to make a specific title request in my request. And then it wraps up with a question. And anybody that's ever written ad copy, again, you know that leaving your ad copy with some sort of cliffhanger or question is a really good way to get a potential customer, potential reader interested and make them click on your ad to maybe go buy your book. So for the second attempt on this one, I kind of followed the same protocol I did for the book description. I just asked it to do the exact same thing, only I gave it some more details about my specific book. And you can see the response, again, is pretty solid. It's implementing the title into that first sentence. It's mentioning the struggling writer. And again, it's ending on the question mark, the will he, won't he, will he survive? Which is just, a really good hook for a horror novel. So again, pretty impressed. And lastly, just for fun, I thought I would ask it something kind of silly. So I just said, hey, how do you write a novel like Stephen King? And this answer is probably the most hit or miss of the answers that it gave me, because I feel like a lot of what's in this answer would apply to just about any author in any genre. But they do mention the horror genre in there. They do mention complex characters. You could definitely see this being specific to Stephen King, but I think this is kind of just, hey, how do you become a successful writer? Which kind of makes sense, because aside from just, mimicking King's style, I guess that's really about the best answer it could give me. Unless it just told me to write about killer clowns in the sewers. So there you go. There's just a few quick examples of how, as an author and content creator, I could utilize ChatGPT to, if not fully create content for me, at least rely on it to give me a pretty good baseline or a starting point that I could then either continue the chat and see if I could make suggestions that it would follow and improve upon, or just take that baseline and modify it myself and kind of fully flesh it out until I was happy. And honestly, this is really just me barely scratching the surface of what this tool is capable of and how I could probably use it going forward as a creator. One thing I haven't tried, but I definitely want to, that I've seen others talk about doing, is to actually provide ChatGPT with your existing book description or your existing ad copy or whatever it might be, and ask it to make it better or make it longer or make it shorter and see what those modifications are, potentially turning it into kind of an artificial intelligence editor. But overall, I'm pretty impressed with what I've seen so far, and I'm pretty excited to see where this is going to go. Not only how the tool is going to continue to evolve, but how I can hopefully come up with other ideas on how to utilize it and maximize its potential. I'm also really curious as to how you guys might be using it. So if you're using ChatGPT right now in your own workflow or your own business or whatever you may be using it for, let me know. Leave a comment down below. But that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up down below. It really does help me out. And subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more videos in the future. Take care.